Hi! Welcome back to Watercolor Wizardry. My name is Zara. If you haven't been before here, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you so much. And if you're a subscriber, thank you. I love you guys. Okay, so today we're going to cover 10 questions in 10 minutes, all regarding watercolor paints. So the first question, what are watercolor paints made of? Well, watercolor paints is a combination of pigments and then a water-soluble binder, usually gum arabic. Some have honey, it depends on the brand, and some have oxgal or synthetic oxgal. So there's different combinations that each brand has for their paints, and they behave a little bit differently once you lay them down. So it depends on what you would like. I happen to prefer Winsor Newton. That was my... This is a dinner plate. It works. I have a ton of different kinds of palettes, but dinner plate is perfectly fine. You just have to keep the dust off of it. So yeah, so watercolor paints are made of pigments, and the pigments, actually, we really rely on car companies for these pigments. So when they stop making them, we just run out of paint. And this is for all paints and all mediums and art. We're just a small smidgen in that whole industry. All right, number 2. How do I choose the right watercolor paints for my project? That's a loaded question, but we're just gonna slow it down to professional versus student, because that's a big question. So let's see. If you're doing something where you're selling it, or if you're displaying it on the wall, usually when you sell something, they're gonna want to display it. You're gonna want to use professional paints, and this is because student grade is not designed to be light fast. They're really trying to save money on that, so they're even going to add fillers into the student grade paints. But they have a use too. If you're painting in a sketchbook, then the light's not going to hit it so much, so it's not such a big deal when you're painting to a point where it's covered, right? This is my sketchbook, and this is my study. And it's not meant, or at least I wasn't planning on hanging it, but this is painted with Winsor Newton Professional, so I could sell this and I could hang it and I wouldn't be worried about it too much, because I use professional paint. And this is B watercolor paper, watercolor sketchbook, which is acid free, and it's a professional level, 100% cotton, half the price of Arsh when I bought it. So I don't know what it is now, but that's why I bought it, is for my studies. But that's not about paints. Let's get back to paint. Okay. Number 3, what's the difference between watercolor tubes and pans? Okay, so most brands, there is no difference. The watercolor in a tube, it'll come out already liquid, so already activated. Basically, you just add more water to it. And then the pans are the tube paints that are dried in a pan. There's a full-size pan and a half-size pan. And usually what I do is I buy tubes, and I try to buy the larger size tubes because that's the most cost-effective. You get more paint for the money. But it's more money up front, but you get more paint for the money, so it'll last me forever. Plus, watercolor, as far as I know, doesn't have an expiration date, so it's lifetime, re-wettable. I love watercolor. So yeah, that's how I do it. That's how I roll. I get the tubes, I pour it in the pan, I let it dry, and then I use the pan. But then the pan is small, so if your brushes are big, then the bristles or the hairs, they don't fit in the pan. So there's these things, it depends on what you're doing. But pans are easier to travel with. And, you're not going to carry a bunch of tubes everywhere. You can, but I don't. So I travel with pans, and I use different palettes. And then with the pans, I can even exchange different colors and have a whole different palette. But you don't need all those colors. even though I know you're gonna buy all of them anyway. But really, I'm actually doing a watercolor workshop. I'm putting it together and we're gonna focus on primary colors. So just 3 colors, yellow, red, blue. But you're gonna learn which yellow with which blue with which red. Because warm and cool matter, complementary colors matter, all those things. It's gonna be cool. So, okay, so I'm putting that together. So if you're interested, let me know. Let's see. Number 4, can I use watercolor paints on regular paper? I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? You can paint on whatever. I actually painted on 59 grams Tomoe River paper, which is designed for fountain pens, and it turned out beautiful. So, but it's not the same experience as painting on watercolor paper, where it is specifically designed for the painting of watercolors. So watercolor paper, they're thicker, right? And it's sized for watercolors. So it's sized so that the pigments go into the paper and you can layer much nicer with watercolor paper. And the thicker the paper, the more layers you can work with too. It's really fun. But with the Tomoe River paper, you know, that was a whole different experience. And I mean, it turned out cool. It turned out really cool as a mixed media. But can you paint? Of course you can paint on regular paper. You can do whatever you want, right? I don't recommend it, but you can do whatever you want. Let's see. It's just not going to absorb. Oh, by the way, if you're getting value out of the videos that I make, please consider subscribing, because I really want to reach that 500 subscriber goal so we can have a membership on YouTube. I think that would be super cool. So, you know, subscribe if you think of it and if you enjoy the videos. All right. Number 5, how do I activate dry watercolor paint? With water. I actually have a spray bottle that I use, and I just spray my palette over here, and that reactivates the paints. All you need is water. That's so cool. I just love watercolor. All right. That's how you would reactivate the paint. Let's see. Number 6, what's the importance of pigment quality in watercolors? Okay, so high quality pigments is generally the light fast factor of it, which means that it won't fade when the sun hits it. So remember what I was saying, that we rely on car companies for their pigments in order to make the paint. Well, car companies have the budget to research the most light fast pigments. Those cars sit in sun all day, so they want their cars not fading. And that's how the art industry gets the colors for their paints, is the car industry. So we're just like, you know, the bottom of the totem pole kind of thing. But that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the light fastness of that pigment in order for it to not fade. And let me tell you, I spend a lot of time on my paintings. I do not want it to fade. I don't want it to change, you know, so I always recommend professional paint, whether you're just beginning or whoever, you know, because you're already spending your time on it, and it's not much more. I mean, it is a lot more money, but I think it's worth it. On top of that, they are vibrant. There's no fillers. So you're getting like the purest form of that pigment in a binder for your painting. So, and I love it. I consider my paintings as offerings to other human beings, which I just love. So I want the best. Like, I want to give them the best. All right, so let's see. How do I store and keep my watercolor paints fresh? I don't know about the fresh part. That doesn't make sense, but how do you store and keep your watercolor paints? Okay, so watercolor, all you need is water to reactivate it. And as far as I know, there's no expiration date for watercolor. So you'll find paints from like 50 years ago and they'll still work. That's like part of the awesomeness of watercolor. So as far as I know, there's no expiration. There might be some pigments that will harden in the tubes, but if you cut open that tube and let it soak in some water, it'll reactivate, most likely. Let's see. And the other thing too, to store your watercolor is to make sure that there's no dust. So me, how I have mine. So how I have mine in the paper, in a plate, I don't have a cover for it, which is the part I don't like. I mean, I like that it was neat that I could just use a plate, you know, as a palette. I think that's awesome. And I do recommend porcelain or ceramic because they're so easy to clean. I just spray it and then I wipe it, and I have a white, fresh workspace to mix the colors that I need. So I do recommend ceramic or porcelain, white, but I also would recommend one that has a cover to keep the dust off, because dust is a pain in the butt when you're painting, and then there's a pile of dust that you're painting, you know, with that, and it's just a little annoying. And you know, I have cats, so there's cat hair floating around. So a cover is nice. A cover is good. So think of that when you're getting a palette, or just, you know, just think of the covering it to keep it fresh, I guess. I don't know why it says fresh. It's not wet. Okay, so number 8, let's move on. Number 8, what's the best way to clean watercolor brushes? I actually have a specific soap that I use to clean the brushes. It's a gentle soap. And it's actually, I think it is even for oil paints and acrylic paint brushes too. I wish I had the brand here, but I couldn't find it, so I don't have it with me. I don't really clean my brushes that often because with watercolor, all you need to do is rinse it off with water. Excuse me. So, number 9, how can I achieve vibrant colors with watercolor? Okay, it's important not to mix their complementary color in order to keep the vibrancy of the pigment. Once you mix it with a complementary, it's gonna mute the color. It's gonna, I don't wanna say dull, but tone it down, not so saturated. And speaking of which, I'm actually putting together a watercolor workshop for color mixing. We're just going to focus on primary colors. So we're just going to focus on mixing yellow, red, and blue. And we're going to talk about which yellow with which red with which blue. And what does cold versus warm mean? And how do you distinguish between the two? So that's exciting. I was aiming for a Black Friday sale, and I might still make it. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But if you're interested, there's more information in the description below. It would be great if you sign up for the wait list. I'll put that together. So that'll be cool. Number 10. Are there any special techniques for layering watercolor paints? There's, I guess you can call them techniques. There's just some things to think about. So you need to have a dry, bone dry painting to layer on so that you're not disturbing the paint beneath. The other thing that would be good to have is a softer bristled or soft haired brush, so that you're not pushing the pigments around. The other thing that's important to know is not to use so much water. So water control is important to understand. And that's about how much water that's on your brush, on your paper, on your palette. The other thing is water to pigment ratio. So how much pigment or how dark is it that you're painting? So you have to, you know, understand how much pigment you're actually putting onto the layer for that layer. So I guess that's 4 things to think about. But the most important, well, they're all important, but one of the most important things that beginners are impatient with is waiting for your paint surface to dry before you layer it with the next layer. You can do blow dryer, you know, you can do all that if you want, and make sure it's a gentle, and it's not like full on air pressure, because that'll change the distribution of your pigments too. So you kind of want a gentle air to dry the whole thing evenly. So you're not drying just a specific spot, because that's going to cause changes in how the pigment will settle. I guess there's a lot to think about. But layering, we can talk more about that later. But yeah, so that's the 10 questions. I made it to 10. Let's see, 16 minutes. That's not bad, right? That's pretty close. So if you have any comments or any questions, make sure to let me know and comment below. Like the video if you like the video, and yeah, subscribe. That would be great, and then we can have fun with a membership on YouTube. All right, so thank you for watching. Thank you for coming back if you've seen me before, and yeah, and welcome to the channel if it's your first time. Nice to meet you. Okay, bye.